welcome to another week. I hope you found last week's video informative, all about the design aspect of fashion. So this week, as promised, we're going to look at production. And there are very many elements of production that people don't think about, because I know the way it works for most businesses here in Kenya is that you like this design, you have the fabric and it's made. So of course with production, it really is focused more on people who want to do production in mass. A lot of these careers help with that specific sector, although you could still have aspects of this even in your small made-to-measure business. So it really just depends on you, and also the fact that you can hire people who specialize in these things into your fashion business. I know there are people who are very, very good at sketching designs, but they have no idea how they're going to put it together, and sometimes the sketch is very impractical because maybe it doesn't have elements like darts, seams, hems, things like that. People sometimes when they're sketching, they don't really think about how it will be put together. So another thing is that last week you realized I did not really include a fashion illustrator in the list, but yes, they are on the list. I didn't really mention them because in Kenya I really don't know anyone who earns money as a fashion illustrator. I think you can earn money as an illustrator, but I don't know about specifically as a fashion illustrator. So I just stuck to maybe things that are more possible here in Kenya. So either way, they are on the list. Somewhere in the world they hire illustrators and buy off their designs, and I'm sure they're used in more than just apparel in terms of making the clothes. They are probably also the ones who design for comic books and shows and stuff like that, because I think the beauty of movies and TV and all that is that you can really go out of the box with what you make, and you don't even have to sew some of them. Some of them are 3D printed. So let's get into the list of production. So the thing about this list is that there's usually overlap with it, including the design side. So you'll find that there's a lot of overlap. I just thought to point that out. So you might actually feel like some of the jobs in this list should be in the design side. It's fine. I just decided to put it like this because I just thought it made sense when I was creating the content. So let's start. So I decided to divide these production related jobs into two. Those who do raw materials, who make raw materials, and these raw materials can be made in line with what the fashion designer wants. There are some fashion brands that are big enough that they can afford to pay someone to make zips and buttons and specific small raw, basically things that you'd put on a garment to specifications that they want. The rest of us and most other people will buy what is available in the market. So someone who already designs and produces these things could market it to people who do production and fashion designers, so they can just include them in their collection and everything like that. So we're going to specifically look at raw materials, but just keep in mind that specific thing, and I'm just going to touch on 3 of them, and then we move on to production related careers. So we start with the textile designer. There's a difference between textile designer and textile print designer. So I'm going to start with the textile designer. Textile designer is a person who specializes in the design of cloth and textiles. So they are the ones specialized in the fabric, the yarns, the weaving, how it is when it's sewn, the dyeing, and the printing is done by somebody else, but they are the ones specializing, you know, how thick a fabric is, how thin it is, how heavy it is, the kind of weaving technique that will be used, the kind of fibers that are used, so different types of fabrics, if it's stretchy, if it is shiny, all that. If it's spun with if it's knitted, there are very many ways fabrics are produced. So a textile designer designs that. It's actually something you have to think about, because garments, like if it's flowy, you need a flowy fabric like chiffon or satin or stuff like that. If you want something more rigid, you need cotton and Basically, you get the gist. That is what a textile designer does. A textile print designer would work closely with a textile designer because, first of all, they do use computer-aided software. The very advanced ones will use a digital way of designing. The others who use tie and dye. The others who do screen printing. There are still some people who use the traditional method of basically creating designs on the textile. A textile designer will also do trend research and forecasting for their products to ensure that the designs they do come up with are on trend. That's why sometimes you can buy a print and it looks like inspiration came from the 70s, maybe with the colors, or you look at another print and it looks like they're celebrating nature, maybe floral prints and leaves and stuff like that. So a lot goes into textile print design. So if you are designing for commercial, basically just to be mass produced so that different people could buy, you would definitely check the trends and all that. But there are designers who also have their own print made by textile print designers. If you can afford it, you can have someone in your team or still outsource it. There are people who do that as a business. So in a nutshell, that is what a textile print designer does. A lot of them are freelancers. Some of them are also hired full-time. Then we have haberdashery designers. Those are the people who design the things we use to put together an outfit. So ribbons, trims, zips, button, piping, fringe, threads, all those kind of things are actually designed. I know sometimes they just look like they pop up somewhere, but they don't. People actually think through them, and you will find that some kind of designs and trims and stuff like that are more available in certain regions than others, mostly because of the fact that they sell. And yes, as I've mentioned, there are some designers who can actually have their own zips, even with their logos and all that, made for them. And there are some who you just have to buy what's available in the market and use that. So haberdashery is very important. I know people don't think about zips being designed, but they are designed. And even the strength is tested so that you can know which zip is used for which garment. You don't just use all zips in anything. You have to check the weight of the zip. You have to check the teeth of the zip. There are some teeth for zips that are close together. Some are further apart. Some are made of plastic. Some are made of metal. Buttons as well. Some are made of coconut husks. Some are made of plastic. Some are made of metal. Threads as well. Some are cotton. Some are cotton polyester and all that. There's a lot that goes into haberdashery. So there are people who actually design this. Of course, ribbons, piping and all that is a no-brainer. But I even know companies in Kenya that this is all they do, and they sell to factories and to individuals. So now we are getting into the production related careers, and this is basically, I guess, overseeing what needs to be done to put an outfit together. So we start with a tailor. So a tailor is a person who custom makes clothes and garments, and a tailor does it by, if you're a small business, taking measurements and making an outfit to fit. But you can also be hired in a factory, and where you're multiple tailors and you're in a production team. Most factories will have tailors do one specific job and do that specific job well. So maybe your job is to stitch the collar, and that's all you'll stitch, and you will do the collar well. And I think depending on who you work for, some people rotate, so the tailors have a good skill. Other people just let the tailor stick to doing one job. So yes, so a tailor is somebody who puts the outfit together. So an inventory planner is very important, whether you're a small business or a large factory. Of course, when you're a large factory, you have more responsibilities, but when you're a small business, basically, this really helps if you are mass producing. You don't really need this if you're doing it in small scale. Although to some extent you could be doing small scale production where you make individual clothes, but you realize that this circular skirt really moves every time people are ordering for it. So you could decide that you're going to make multiple of them, so that when someone wants and comes for that specific skirt, you already have it in hand and you just sell it to them. That is one aspect of it. But if you are actually producing in mass, whether in small or large, an inventory plan is one who decides how many pieces. Maybe size large moves more, so you need more pieces of size large than the small and extra large and and the medium, or you are the one who also decides which specific size goes to which specific region. If you are distributing, let's say, all over Kenya, and majority of size small sells in a specific county, then you will send majority of that there, but add a few pieces of the other sizes. So an inventory planner plans that. They also plan how many pieces maybe a store will get, because maybe in this area they don't move so much, so you don't take so many, and this other area they move a lot, so you take more. So that also happens, of course, in other types of inventory, including for the sewing equipment. Like, I can tell you, I've gone up country and I've realized that most things you would sell, if you are selling inventory for haberdashery or sewing supplies, you'd probably take a lot of plain fabrics like lining and all that, because most of the tailors there will deal with repairs and making things for school kids and school uniforms and things like that. So it doesn't make sense to take a lot of variety like laces and stuff like that to that region, because either way, even if a client wants a very specific thing made, they would rather travel to Nairobi and have it made, because they know that here maybe the skill level is higher. So inventory planning is needed, whether you're selling clothes, haberdashery, fabric, whatever it is you're selling. You need to plan and know where you sell what. It's also very useful for when you're selling to trade fairs and craft fairs, and knowing what sells and what doesn't, so that you can know what you're stocking. So product developer, this is a job basically for someone who's trying to manage production. A product developer is not necessarily the person who will produce the clothes, although this is generally misunderstood, especially for some of the consultancies I've done where I do product development. Someone comes to me because I am a designer, and yes, I do have a strength in managing tailors and managing production, but they assume that I'm the one who's supposed to do it. So basically what a product developer is supposed to do is oversee the apparel process from the design conception to the production process, basically do costs, timelines, negotiate all that, source for fabrics, buttons, zips. Sometimes, of course, a client comes with all those, which is usually good, but basically just to make sure that the timelines are met and the quality standards are met for whatever is being produced. So of course this is a very useful title for factory people. Of course, factory level is very, very high level. I have not reached the factory level yet, but for small batch production I do help people with that based on my experience in the industry. A technical designer needs to be someone who's very good with patterns and very good with construction. And a technical designer can also be in the design side of fashion, but they are basically like the engineers. They're like the engineers of the garment. They're the ones that will determine how many pieces of an outfit there is. I can give you an example. Let's just say we have a plain dress with sleeves. An ordinary person will see that as a very simple dress, and they might not think about how many pieces need to go to make that dress. So maybe the dress has a detail of a panel in the middle under the bust, so that would make the front have 2 pieces. Then if the back has a zip, that means there are 2 pieces of the back. Maybe the sleeve has a detail. So you have to be very, very good at looking at the smallest detail of a garment and ensuring that it brings out the outfit the way it was initially designed, or also advise on things that could be changed. So a technical designer will oversee things like measurements, samples, the sewing method that will be used, because yes, there are sewing methods you could use, the kind of stitch and how it fits and everything like that. So that's part of the job of a technical designer. They're very useful for both factory and small scale businesses, and it's more useful for mass produced clothes, but also a very necessary skill for made to measure clothes. So they also communicate a lot of the sewing details to the factories, to the tailor, and what they're going to make and everything like that, but that's their job. Quality assurance manager is the person who is going to check if everything has been put to standard. Basically, all the notes that maybe the technical designer had written, the quality assurance manager will ensure that if the technical designer had written that the shoulder length of a top is 5 inches, then it needs to be 5 inches, and maybe if it goes a size up, it will be 5.5 inches or 6 inches and all that. So a quality assurance manager makes sure if you're mass producing clothes and they are all size 12, all the size 12s need to be identical, or all the size 10s need to be identical. And we also check finishing. They check if the buttons have been placed the right way. They check if the tags have been put the right way. They check that all the information is there, and just basically quality of everything, finishings, all that is a quality assurance manager. Most factories, very big productions, have a team, so they'll have a lot of people and that's all they do all day. Other people will have only one person and that's the job they do to check. So they even measure, they do everything just to make sure everything is the same and done at the best quality. So a production manager is responsible for overseeing all the elements of the garment manufacturing process. So that will include fabric testing, cutting, sewing, final garment appearance, and packaging. They also check that the people being employed are treated fairly, that there's no violation with environmental requirements, because manufacturing plants actually are supposed to meet some certain requirements with that. They also check all the legal and ethical requirements. They also make sure timelines are properly followed, because they also check the shipping and production and everything. Basically, they just manage things. They are not necessarily directly involved with how things are made, but making sure that things are made to the standard. So yes, this production manager job could easily be in the fashion business side, but I put it on this list because I feel like it closely works with people who produce the clothes more than how the clothes are selling and things like that. So as I said, some of the things on this list should be in different lists, but yeah, some of them overlap with the different jobs and all that. Yeah, so I guess that's the end of production. I hope you found the video insightful. Some of my advice I would give, especially in this production side, is when you're working with tailors, there's some tailors who would come by your workshop and maybe you work with them and you realize they're very, very good with maybe helping out other tailors, explaining things like that, and understanding the concept and your work. If possible, while you're building your business, make that tailor your production manager and make them be in charge of the other tailors, so that it releases that burden of explaining every single design to tailors. Because I know sometimes there is that micromanaging aspect that comes with the job, because you want it done well and because you want to please your client and all that. But it's also good to learn to delegate and spot out talent. So it's very important to understand the people who work for you, where they are at in terms of their skill. Not everybody is supposed to be behind a machine, because I know sometimes the only people you think of hiring are tailors to be able to do the job, but sometimes you do need people who can manage the work, so that you can maybe focus on only the aspect of designing and coming up with new creations. And yes, for me, design also comes with travel, so that you can get inspiration and things like that. Story for another day. Thank you for watching. Next week we look at the more familiar side of fashion that the whole public always sees: marketing and business, especially the marketing, because it involves magazines and modeling and photography. So see you next week. Thank you so much for watching this series. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Bye.